If you would, get your Bibles, whether it's on your phone, whether it's a physical one. If you need one, there's some in the back. Just grab those. And we are going to be in Psalm 23. We're doing Summer of the Psalms. Summer in the Psalms. I can't remember what we titled it. All right, Summer in the Psalms. And here's if you ever find yourself doing sermon prep one day and trying to outline sermons for the future, don't ever pick one way in advance because you think it will be easy, all right? This is what happened with this one is as I'm sitting there thinking through Psalms months ago, thinking, let's pick some Psalms, I was like, hey, I'll just throw 23 in there, because it's an easy one, right? And you know what? I found this is probably been the hardest sermon prep in a while this week, and I think the reason being because this psalm has become so cliche in churches. If you've been in church for just a little while, you've probably heard Psalm 23 read. If you've been to a funeral, it most definitely was probably read. It is my graveside psalm, so if I'm ever doing your funeral, this is the one I read at graveside. And it's a good one, but what happens is when we hear it so much, and when we hear it without necessarily thinking about it very deeply, it can become, we can become desensitized to really the true meaning. And even in sermon prep, thinking through it of hey, I've got to get outside of the realm of just repeating this, almost like it's a chant or a ritual, and what does this really mean? Why is this become so popular? And so, this morning, we're going to take a stab at it, all right? So Psalm 23, we're going to read these 6 verses, and then we're just going to go through verse by verse. Nothing crazy or super cute, but just going right through it and saying, hey, Lord, what is your word saying to us? So Psalm 23, this is also labeled a Psalm of David. You can see there's no context to it, so it's something that we take as a standalone. So the psalm for it is just 23. There's no other psalms that add to it, just what we have in these 6 verses. So if you will follow along with me, let's read all 6. This Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now we see this psalm, and I think it's important for us to understand the imagery, if it's not obvious, is that if this is of David, this is a reflection, or if this is just personifying David, it's a reflection of his time as a shepherd. And he is equating this moment of the Lord being his shepherd and him being the sheep. And so all of this is falling in line with shepherd-sheep imagery of its day. All right, so we're going to explain some of those things and dig into the meaning behind some of this. But right off the bat, we see the Lord is my shepherd. The rest of the psalm, by the way, doesn't give us the warm fuzzy, the good feeling or anything like that unless this first verse proves to be true. This is a declaration from the author, basically almost boasting in his tone that the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is the one who watches over me. If I'm a sheep, he's the one that manages, has ownership in my life. So what gives the Lord the right to be our shepherd? Because a lot of times this is really the question, is the Lord really my shepherd? Well, Philip Keller, he writes a book, says the shepherds look at Psalm 23, 3 things that he marks out. He says he has the right to be our shepherd. Number 1, he created us as an object of affection for himself. So he is our creator. Created us because he loved us. He wanted us. He valued us. Not because he needed us, because he wanted us. Second thing is he gave up his life for the sheep. This is a proven love. Something that, by the way, the author of this psalm doesn't have a full fulfillment or understanding of. So he's saying the Lord is his shepherd. We get to look back as the Lord is our shepherd and understand that our shepherd has proven his love for us by laying down his life. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd and I lay down my life for the sheep, and then proved it to be true. The third reason Philip Keller gives is why he has the right to be our shepherd is he continually reaches out to us, continually intervenes in our lives, watches over us, doesn't leave us alone, doesn't simply let us go ahead and travel and farther and farther away from him without at least making an attempt to bring us back. You see, there's a difference between, there were many shepherds during this time. There's shepherds today even, and there's good shepherds and there's bad shepherds. Bad shepherds do not pay attention to their flocks. Their flocks get sick, they're malnourished, they wander. Good shepherds, it is a tedious job if you go and do a little bit of research. Constantly caring for a sheep, which by nature standard is for the most part a dumb animal. They wander off. But a shepherd watches over the sheep and has to inspect it regularly, make sure that it's in right places to feed well, to make sure they stay out of danger because they'll wander into it. They won't even drink water unless they feel safe, and so that's all of the shepherd's duty. And so what we see is this imagery here, and right off the bat, the author is, the Lord is my shepherd. And he follows that up with what? I shall not want. It's a strange way to just simply say, I have all that I need. I have all that I need. There's nothing else that I'm looking for. All that I need provided for me, he has given me. The Lord is my shepherd. And I think we have to get that as we start off, because the rest of it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We can have great words that we like to repeat for ourselves, but then if we don't have the context behind it that the Lord is our shepherd, then they really don't, they fall a little flat. So my question before we go on for you, and it's rhetorical, I'm not going to make you all answer. Is the Lord your shepherd today? And there's two ways that I mean that. Now, there's the understanding, the intellectual, yes, the Lord is my shepherd. I've placed my trust in him with my life. He's my salvation, and so the Lord is my shepherd. But is he also your shepherd in application? Day-to-day life, how we manage our lives, how we go through our lives, is he noticeably our shepherd in our decision-making, how we interact with people, how we work, how we raise our family? Is the Lord our shepherd? And so I think as we start off with this, the author's making a very clear statement with the Lord being his shepherd and that he is the owner and controller of my life. And if that is true, if that is both in understanding and functionality, the rest of what we read then comes into play here. If the Lord is your shepherd, then these things are also true about his character and how he's going to shepherd you as his sheep. So what I want you to be asking yourself, is the Lord my shepherd? Do I allow him to own my life? Do I allow him to manage my life? Or is he just a really good part of my life? Is he just a really good fallback plan for my life? Is he a really good friend when I'm feeling down? Is he just a really good this or that I can just simply add on to my life when it becomes convenient? Because that's not what the author's talking about here. The Lord is my shepherd, and so guess what? As a sheep, if we're using that same imagery, I don't go anywhere that the shepherd doesn't lead. I don't eat anywhere that the shepherd doesn't lead me to. I don't drink in peace unless the shepherd makes it so. I can't feel protected or safe without the shepherd. I'm not protected or safe without the shepherd. All the rest of this passage hinges on our belief of that first verse in our own lives. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. And then he moves on. He makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. I love the imagery right there. He makes me lie down in green pastures. And the way I've always heard it read, and I've read it, just even myself, is, he takes me to green places to eat, like he provides for me. Now, I like the wording. He makes me lie down in green pastures. This is the idea that the shepherd brings the sheep to a place that they can eat in peace, that they're not constantly worried about the things swirling about, whether it's predators or disease. He brings to a place that I know it's safe to eat here, to actually find rest, to just simply take a breath, right? The shepherd does. He makes me lie down. The shepherd knows better than us when we need to rest, and at times, he forces the issue. He makes them lie down in green pastures. And for you and for me, he makes us lie down and rest at times. It's funny because we're taking the month of July, we take a house church break. And we kind of break from anything that we have. Yeah, Chris has already smiled. I was like, it's coming, Chris. I'm just letting you know. Got to Bible thump everybody, because I've heard a few different times, why do we have to take a break? And here's one thing. I love the fact that some don't want to take a break because you want to spend time with each other. You want to be around it. That's great, all right? However, we build in these times of rest. Why? Because of these types of things. We know that at times we don't even realize when we need to rest, when we need to take a break. And so we have host homes, we have house church pastors that have jobs and all these types of stuff. And so what do? Well, we build in specific times of having a rest, and hopefully during that time we can be rejuvenated to continue to minister even better with each other. And so we build in these times of rest, and the Lord does that as well as the Good Shepherd. When he's going through, we go through our lives and we're hard charging, right? I mean, our country is great. It's also built on the backs of people that just burn out, right? And we just have to go, go, go. And if you have been, an adult for long, the idea is that you have to be busy. And if you're not busy, then you're lazy. Or if you're not busy, then you're not getting things accomplished. Or all the time that you just sit down, then there's other things that you could be doing, right? It even allows us to the point that we don't sleep well, because the time that we're sleeping, we could be doing something. And a lot of times, we can charge so hard that the Lord has to force us into a place of rest, to relax. And if he's your shepherd, those may look like times of discipline just to simply slow you down. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me take a breath and realize it's okay to sit still, to reflect on him, to enjoy time with family, to enjoy good people. He leads me beside still waters. Good shepherd leads sheep to the places with the best quality, pure and peaceful water for the sheep to drink. Sheep, once they get thirsty and they're walking and they're being guided, if the shepherd's not careful, sheep will just simply go and drink brackish water or stagnant water, things that have parasites in them, just because they're thirsty. They themselves don't have this idea or this internal mechanism that says this is not good water to drink, and so I shouldn't drink it. And so the shepherd has to go before and really scout out where he's taking them and making sure he leads them to waters that is both good for them. Not to mention any water that is has waves or has a lot of ripples in it, sheep don't calm down enough to drink either. And so they could actually just dehydrate themselves to death because they don't feel comfortable. The Good Shepherd brings us beside still waters. And we see this, he restores my soul. The Lord brings your soul back to a place of enjoyment and functionality. You ever had where your soul feels so down that you just don't want to get up anymore? That you don't want to take another step? That you don't want to wake up? That you don't just want to do your job anymore? This is not the characteristics of the Lord. This is not the Lord's doing when we find ourselves in those moments. Jesus says later, "Come to me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." The Lord, as the good shepherd, is not looking to make our soul feel beat down or unmanageable. And I've felt this even with ministry work before. That was a lie from the enemy telling me that I'm doing lots of things for the Lord and I feel beat down and that I can't manage this, but I'm doing ministry things, right? So it's got to be of the Lord. No. The good shepherd restores your soul. He brings you back to a place of refreshment to help you continue to move on in his name's sake. And that's what we see in the thing. Once he restores my soul, he leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. He brings us to a place of righteous decision making. Not tired, worn out decision making, but righteous decision making. It creates momentum for his name as well. The Lord is not taking you to a place where sinful behavior is what is expected. Instead, as he restores us, he then puts us on a track or leads us into a path that makes decisions that reflect good on his name and who he is, because he is our shepherd. And so then the decisions and the things that we do in life and the way in which we walk reflect back on who our shepherd is. I told you guys, just even my own life, I've experienced this. So for those that don't know, a lot of you do, but so I had a stroke the day before Thanksgiving. And yes, I'm only 39, okay? And I had a stroke. And you know what? I fully believe that was from God making me lie down in green pastures to reflect. Because I've been hard charging, gone a long time, didn't pay attention to my health. There's times that my family was without me, that I wasn't a good husband, a good father. Why? All in the name of doing things for the Lord. While all the time feeling beat down, unmanageable, stressed. And even when I got here, like a lot less stress with people, but I was still hard charging, always looking for the next thing that we were going to do and the next thing that we were going to accomplish as a church. And I'm not happy where we're at because I want to get to where we are in the future in this ongoing issue. And you know what? I throw a pop fly to one of my boys and I have a stroke. And by the way, I sat around in my house for 3 days before I went to the hospital, all right? So even though I don't know anything about cars, I'm a man's man, right? I'm not going to the doctor. But I can remember the feeling, helplessness, when the doctor comes in and says, "We're admitting you," because, by the way, I was really frustrated. I was ready to get out. We had things going on at the church, literally, that I want to get out and do. And boom, you had a stroke. And I remember in that moment, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And for the next 5 days, I didn't want to be in the hospital, but I feel like in that moment, I got a lot of time with the Lord. And a lot of time reading his word. And I remember thinking, Lord, okay, I naturally don't like to slow down, but I get the message. And Brittany and I had some really good talks of like, hey, you got to stop ignoring your health. We want you around. And I was glad to hear that. I was glad that she wanted me around, right? And she wasn't all of a sudden checking like health insurance stuff and life insurance policies and stuff like that. But we need to understand, and we can trust, if the Lord is our shepherd, that God wants to instill peace into our lives. All of these actions by the Good Shepherd that we look at are ones that bring our life to a place of eternal peace. Forced rest at times when we won't pay attention, leading us beside places to feel at peace in the things that we're doing, restoring our soul, leading us to paths of righteousness to reflect back on who he is. I think the work of the Lord in our lives is always meant to settle the chaos and bring us clarity and sober-minded actions in our decision making. When we feel it's chaotic, that we just don't have a clear answer and there's a lack of clarity, we need to understand that according to this, when the Lord is our shepherd, he brings those things into focus. And when they seem out of focus and everything's swirling about and we just can't concentrate and we feel unpeaceful, that's not of the Lord. Even if we're doing the Lord's work in the midst of it. It's important to know that anxiety and chaos and overwhelming pressure is not a God-ordained feeling. Verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. This is a great follow-up, because if we just had verses 2 and 3, we would think anything bad that comes up in our life, like the Lord wants us to be comfortable. And I think this is a great follow-up by the author and the understanding of what his reader, his audience is going to hear this. But it says, listen, even though the Lord is my shepherd, that does not mean that we're not going to go through dicey times. That we're not going to go through times that feel scary or overwhelming or things that are going to come at us in all directions. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. The imagery here is more than likely in the place in which the author is writing. They had a lot of ravines or high cliffs that had a lot of pockets and caves and things like that you would be walking your sheep through, and you were in danger in those places. Bandits would hide out there, thieves, also predators for the sheep and things like that. So as you're walking through these areas, you're kind of holding your breath, hoping that you just get through to the other side unscathed. And so what he's saying with the imagery of him being the sheep is, even though I walk through this valley of the shadow of death, which sounds like the worst thing ever, by the way, as I walk through this, I will fear no evil. Listen, the Lord is your shepherd. It does not mean that you won't find dangerous times or times of uncertainty or times of grief. And as he says it, even though I walk, he's actively walking through in the wording. I will fear no evil. Why? Because you're with me. The Lord applies the confidence for us to walk through these times. Why? Because we're not alone. And not that we have people around us and things like, but we have the King who sits on his throne and rules all of creation also right there with us. And as we walk through things that are super uncertain or super scary or super grief-stricken, as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, it's not that we're not necessarily afraid, but we're not going to fear evil in the moment. It's not going to cause this life-crippling fear to where we no longer get out of bed or we no longer take a step forward. Why? Because we can walk through the valley because he's with us. So it's not an absence of fearful things, but it's the courage to walk into the midst of them, knowing that there's a greater power that's walking us through the shadow of death. And he gives us courage to see it through. For you are with me. And look, your rod and your staff. So the shepherd's tools were two main things. When you get out, and now maybe more modern shepherding is a little bit different. You got a rifle and things like that. They didn't have that during this time. And so when they're riding it, if you take your herd out, I think that's what you call a herd of sheep, and you take that out, and as the shepherd, you have two main tools that you would take. You would have a staff. You guys ever remember the old cartoons where you'd have somebody that was a bad act and they would pull them off the stage, okay? And, well, it was like a shepherd's staff, and they would hook them and then yank them off the stage, okay? Well, it looked a lot like that. It's the only imagery I can remember to kind of get in your head. So they had that, and then they had this, what they call a rod. And what they would do is they would actually dig out a plant that the roots would dig down, and at the base of it would create this kind of like this knob, like big part. And they would take this plant out, and they would carve it and whittle it down to where it fit directly in the shepherd's hand, and this rod would basically be, they could throw this thing, they'd hit things with it, and so it was like this weapon to protect the sheep from any type of bandits or predators or anything along those lines. So they really just had these two tools on them the whole time. The rod was one of protection. And so you see a wolf coming, throws the rod, and they would be so accurate with they could hit the wolf, and in times, if they hit him just right, they could kill him on contact. I mean, it's crazy. You can look up some videos of shepherds throwing the rod and stuff. It's pretty amazing what they could do with this thing. But this was the object of protection. And so to protect and understand as they're walking through this valley of the shadow of death, that he has this weapon of protection. And every now and then for the sheep, it was correction as well. So a sheep gets out of line, hits the sheep, gets them back to where they're supposed to go. And then the staff, this longer kind of pole, is to keep the sheep in line and keep them from straying away. So if they all started to veer, they would stick out the staff and they would put it back. Also, if you had a brand new lamb that was born and needed to be back to his mom, well, you didn't want the scent of the human on it and for the mom to reject the young lamb. So they would pick it up with the end of the staff and they would basically toss it back over to the mom so that they could continue to nurse it and things along those lines. And so if we take that imagery and we're trying to understand what is the author saying here about the Good Shepherd, is that as we're going through these things and as we're getting the courage to have to walk through these times of uncertainty or danger, in the moment, the Lord has a weapon to protect us, to correct us, and a staff to keep us from straying. And he walks us through this path to get to the other side. That's safety, that's peace, that's continuing on in whatever he has for us. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. We can trust that God is still present through the valley of death moments, that his presence is still there, that he's still operating. He's there as a source of protection from the threat, both seen and unseen, both expected and unexpected. He's also present to keep us walking on the path that gets us to point B. And even while we're walking through it, when we want to panic, when we want to bail, when we want to just get out of there, when we want to bury our heads in the sand and not deal with it, there's the staff to get us right back in line. This is your mission. This is what we're doing. We're getting to the other side. And then he ends it, you prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Sorry, I went a little King James there. Sorry about that. That's old school. All right? In the presence of my enemies. This is a great imagery here. The shepherd, a lot of times, would find a higher ground with vegetation for the sheep to roam and where they're protected by the high ground. And so what we would think of, if you remember your world geography classes, a mesa, basically you'd walk them up to a flat top that has vegetation growing on it. And so this would be like it was. And so what would happen is the sheep could go up here, they could roam, they could eat in peace, all the while all predators or bandits, everything can be seen at the bottom. And so this imagery here is David saying, listen, you take me up to this place, this higher ground, you prepare a table before me to where I can eat in peace while my enemies stare up at me and there's nothing that they can do about it. Oh, it's this ultimate sign of victory. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. We can have assurance that victory comes from the Lord. And that looks different usually in our imagery than the Lord's. But understand, the Good Shepherd prepares a table. Not only for us to enjoy and to get the nourishment that we need, but at the same time, all those who hope for our downfall are only simply able to stare and look on. The Lord allows me to eat while my enemy looks on and can do nothing. And then you anoint my head with oil. My cup, it overflows. Oil was used by shepherds to keep different parasites from becoming a nuisance or even fatal to the sheep. Especially during certain times, these bugs would kind of crawl up the nasal cavity of a sheep and would implant, and the larvae and stuff like that would get into their brain and basically kill the sheep. Something so small. And so it would take consistent, continual, basically for the shepherd to overlook the sheep and inspect them, continue to reapply the oil over and over. And what do we see with this? That the Lord closely inspects us, cares about us to a point that he continually takes care of us. But because he's the good shepherd. He's not one that simply just added us to his herd and forgot it. No, each sheep is important to the point that the Lord inspects them, cares for them, prepares them. No one's forgotten. Continual and frequent care is what we can expect when the Lord is our shepherd. My cup overflows. Why is it overflowing? Because the blessings just don't seem to stop. I mean, think what we've just seen. We have a Lord that cares so much about us, even when we don't think we need peace. He provides it. He forces it if we need to, because we don't know what's best for ourselves. He watches over us as we walk through uncertain times. He's with us, and not only that, he's actively leading us through that. And then here, not only that, but he gives us victory over our enemies, ultimate victory. He continually cares for us. Just tedious maintenance on us. We are high maintenance people. Now, maybe comparatively, you may think you're low maintenance, but for the Lord, you're high maintenance. All of us in here, we're high maintenance. Why? Because our understanding and our living for the Lord, it is a roller coaster if we're all honest. Some days we're really good. Some days we're really low. Some days we're kind of just complacent. Some days we're on fire. And all the while, no matter where you find yourself, the Lord is still doing maintenance. He's like the world's greatest repairman, right? It's like a Disney World repairman, always having to fix the rides. And what does the author end with? So my cup overflows, and notice what I can expect going forward. What I can expect for the rest of time. Surely, because the Lord is my shepherd and he does all of these things, surely, even though I don't know what's ahead, as I continue to walk, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. This is what I can expect. That the Lord's goodness continually follows me. His mercy continually follows me. I don't know what's ahead. I don't know what other valleys I'm going to walk through. I don't know what things I'm going to face. But I know that because the Lord is my shepherd and all the evidence that I have up until now, I know that as I continue to take a step and I continue to travel in this way, goodness and mercy, characteristics of him as he sits on his throne, will continue to follow me. What is the imagery? The Lord still is with us all through the rest of time, and constantly we get to enjoy his goodness in our lives and his mercy in our lives. The Lord will never leave the author alone or abandon him. Even in his darkest moments, he still has the Lord to be able to lean on. And then what does he say? I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That forever there is actually means for length of days. So as much time that there may be left, this is what I get to enjoy and look forward to. I will dwell, not just visit, not be able to look at it. I get to dwell. I get to live in the house of the Lord. There's some really good contractors in the area. Really beautiful houses, but I don't think any of them went to the architect school that the Lord did. And so to dwell in his house for the length of days, all the days that we can count that are left, wherever that end is, which there is no end, I get to dwell in the house of the Lord. This is the shepherd's
promised to us, and guess what? This is what the author is looking forward to. Why? Because this puts us in the most spiritually mature spot. Because if this is what we're looking forward to, as Paul said, put your mind on things above, right? So if I know that no matter what happens in my life, my darkest day, I wake up and things just go wrong, surely goodness and mercy will continue to follow me. But I know that I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, for the length of days. It makes everything that we go through, it compacts it into the proper perspective. I can get through this. I can walk through this. Why? Because I am valued. The Lord is my shepherd. And I know that the promise at the end and all the things I have to go through, that I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We have to train ourselves to live in this way. Why? Because the Lord, the shepherd, the Lord as our shepherd, we have assurance and hope always for the future. Always. Every day can be brought back to a place that we can function. Every attitude that we have, no matter how low, can be brought up to a place of joy and expectancy of what we see is coming in the future. Every problem can be faced. Every trial can be walked through, even when it seems overwhelming. Why? Because we will dwell with the Lord forever. There is an end to our suffering. There is a starting point for our hope to be realized, and that is when we dwell with Him. This is why Paul is so conflicted with Philippians. He says, to live is Christ, but to die is gain. I think it would be much better if I just simply went to be with the Lord. But it's better for me to stay for you. I think we should all feel that same confliction in our lives. Why? Because understanding that our hope will be realized when we're with the Lord, but there's still a lot of good we can do in His name while we're here. I might have the band, if you guys would go ahead and just head this way. I want to end with this story. Came across this story. I don't know if you've ever heard of William Borden. William Borden, amazing story. William Borden was born November 1st in 1887. 1887. William Borden, however, though, was born into a millionaire family. Millionaires, by the way, in 1887, not millionaires today. So the money went a little bit farther even back then, all right? Rich beyond belief. And William Borden, he grew up in this kind of life of luxury. His parents provided everything that he needed. His mother was a devout Christian. Father, much more of a businessman. And William Borden, at age 7, was sitting in a church service with his mother, and the speaker said, who would commit their life for the Lord's purposes? And 7-year-old William Borden, he stood up in the midst of all these adults that had stood up, and everybody kind of looked at him and kind of chuckled, oh, this is a cute 7-year-old. But that commitment that he made at 7 years old, he took that seriously. And for the rest of his time as a teenager and going to school, he committed to saying, what does the Lord have for me? Well, William Borden, because he had so many means, he really wasn't going to have to work. He could do whatever he wanted. He had tons of money. Well, when he graduated high school, his parents, they decided to gift him with a trip around the world. That's how resourceful they were. And so he goes on this trip, and he has a friend that tags along who was in seminary at the time. And as they did Bible studies. They stopped in these different places, and he stops in northwest China to this group that was heavily populated by Chinese Muslims in the area. And William Borden, seeing the need here, he decided as he goes back that he's going to be a missionary. His millionaire father was none too happy. His mother was thrilled. But he dedicates and starts to train as a missionary. He goes to seminary. His father passes away in 1906. He was 19 years old. His father left him his entire fortune and more money than he would ever need. As he was in college, doing seminary. He set up Bible studies. He helped the needy, disabled, and the disabled during his free time continue the path to be a missionary. Everybody was kind of hoping that something would just change in him. I mean, you have all this money, you have all these opportunities. And public, they told him he was crazy. This was like a celebrity thing. The papers would actually write about, what is William Borden going to do? And they would make fun of him and mock him. That why having all of this opportunity and you can do all of this good even with all this money, why would you go and be a missionary? But yet he committed. He was ordained to be a missionary in 1912. And at age 25, he left for Egypt to study Islam and learn Arabic to be able to minister to the people that were in the area of China that he was going to go. But William Borden's story takes a kind of a crazy turn. Right as Easter comes around, he actually developed cerebral meningitis in 1912, and he actually passes away at the age of 25 years old. And I think we would sit there and see, like, why? Why would that happen? And you know what the papers did? Those that mocked him before, they didn't let up now. They would write things like, what a waste. The fortune could have been used for so many good things, but yet this foolish idea. And I think this comes into scope as we finish this, that I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Because William Borden, even at 25 years old, had this understanding as he's looking ahead. There's nothing worth doing in this life with all this money and these resources that I have that is better than following the Lord's plan for my life, because no matter what happens, when it's over, no matter how early or how late, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so all those people that wrote, what a waste. After his death, they pulled his Bible out and they opened it. And there was a small inscription. And you know what he wrote? No reserves, no retreats, no regrets. We can only write those types of things when we have this understanding in our lives that we are following the Lord wherever he leads. And that no matter what's waiting at the end for us, we have this understanding, hey, whatever I run into, if it ends my life, if it continues my life, that's not even what I'm looking at. I'm looking at dwelling in the house of the Lord for the rest of time. That puts everything into perspective for us. It guides us, it motivates us, it empowers us, it gives us courage. And so this morning, if you would, let's just stand. And as we go into this reflection time, I want to ask you that same question that we started off with. Is the Lord your shepherd? Not just in understanding, not because we made a decision to follow him, but are we allowing him to be our shepherd day in and day out? Because if we're not allowing him to guide us, if we're not allowing him to shepherd us, a lot of time that peace is absent. That fear is crippling. And that hope is fleeting. This morning, let's take a second. Let's bow our heads. Let's close our eyes. And I just want you to ask the Lord, have I allowed you to be my shepherd? Am I allowing you to shepherd me now? And if not, Lord, how do I do that? What's missing? What have I ignored from you? And if you have been, we ask, Lord, what's next? What next valley are we walking through? How can I be strengthened in you this morning? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Let us hold on to that and remember the psalm for what it really is. It is encouragement and exciting for us if the Lord is our shepherd. Pray that the Lord is your shepherd this morning. As we go into this time of communion, to remember what the Lord did, how he proved that he was the good shepherd for us. And let's just continue this time of worship together. Lord, thank you for this morning. Thank you for ordaining this time. But I pray that we could just simply look to you and to see what you've done in our lives, and Lord, how you promote peace in our hearts and our souls. Lord, how you give us courage to continue to walk through the things that life throws at us. And Lord, I pray that we would just simply be able to look beyond this life and understand the hope that we have in your promises and what lies ahead. Lord, this morning, I pray that we would just simply allow our hearts to shift and allow you to be our shepherd, and that we would see your goodness and your mercy follow us all the days of our lives. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.